Now, the war in Ukraine has taken a fierce new turn with a deadly attack, but what Russia says has in fact resulted in the deaths of at least about 18 people and has resulted in injuries to at least about 100 others. Now, Russia claims that all targets were hit in Ukraine, while also adding that it has carried out 50 group strikes and one massive strike in the last week. Now, early on Friday morning, Kiev woke up to a deadly onslaught by Russia. Missiles hit the residential buildings in the Ukrainian capital, killing at least about 12 civilians and injuring a dozen others. At least about 100 drones and missiles struck at least about 6 Ukrainian cities, including in Kharkiv in the northeast, Lviv in the west, Dnipro in the east, and Odessa in the south. Now, on the Dnipro River in Zaporizhia, at least about 4 people were killed and 12 others were wounded. A record number of missiles rained down in the cities across Ukraine. And officials say that they hit maternity hospitals, shopping arcades, warehouses, and metro stations and residential blocks. According to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russia hit the Ukrainian targets with almost everything in its arsenal. Now, Kiev says that it has destroyed about 114 missiles and drones out of the 158 that had been fired by Russia. Now, these latest attacks have come in the background of the attack that took place in Crimea, where the Russian Navy had suffered a major setback when Ukraine managed to strike a Russian landing warship in the Crimean port of Feodosia this week. And this was after the Russian troops had captured the Ukrainian city of Mariinka just last week. However, so far, Ukraine's counteroffensive has produced only very modest gains. So the question is this: how is the West reacting to this shelling? From France to the United Kingdom and the European Union, all of them have condemned the attack, while Paris has called out a part of Russia's strategy of terror. London has said that it will continue to stand with Ukraine. Now, the American ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, said that the strikes showed Ukraine needs funding very urgently. This after the United States had released the last tranche of the aid package worth $250 million for Ukraine. Now, the US Congress also needs to approve more aid. In a parallel development, Poland said that a Russian missile had passed through Polish airspace on Friday. As of now, there have been no reports of any casualties. Remember, Poland is a NATO member nation. A stray Ukrainian missile also struck a village in southern Poland in November 2022, sparking fears of a potential spillover of the Ukraine war. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment, we're being joined in by Mr. John Irath, who's joining us live from Washington. He's a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Now, Mr. Irath, this is a critical moment in terms of what has happened. Now, the Americans have sent the last tranche of $250 million in terms of aid that they had for Ukraine. And at this moment, as things stand, unless there's more approval from the Congress, the Americans can't be sending more military aid to Ukraine. And in that context, Russia turning up the heat in terms of the number of strikes that we've witnessed. What do you make of this strike by Russia?
I think that this is part of a very consistent Russian strategy that has been in place since the middle of 2022. The aim of the Russian strategy is to persuade countries that support Ukraine that the war is not winnable for Ukraine and that they should be coming to Russia with proposals to end the war in such a way that would lock Russian territorial gains into place and allow Russia to claim some form of victory. So the latest round of attacks is but another way that Russia seeks to reinforce the idea that it wants everyone to have, that the war is not winnable for Ukraine, and so it needs to end as soon as possible.
Joe Biden had said that the United States will, of course, continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. But now, you know, what we've heard from the United States is very different. Now, Joe Biden says that the United States will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it can. What do you say about the Western support that has been offered for Ukraine to fight off the Russian onslaught? What is going to happen? Is the United States now letting Ukraine sink?
Absolutely not. the support in the United States and in most of the West for Ukraine continues. There is some evidence that there is some fatigue among donor countries and some perception that the Russian propaganda is having an effect, that the war is going on too long and there is nothing to be gained from continuing. That's Russian propaganda, and it is in some ways being effective. But the majority of opinion in the United States is still that it is important to support Ukraine and to continue to provide assistance. This, of course, risks being caught up in internal politics. 2024 is an election year in the United States, and many in the Republican Party see that the priority is higher on keeping control of the White House, in denying President Biden re-election. And so they are willing to, in effect, hold Ukrainian aid hostage to achieving those electoral goals. But that's internal politics. It's not an indication of a lack of support for Ukraine.
Now, you say that's internal politics, but not a lack of support for Ukraine. But the question is this. A lot of people are now talking, how can Ukraine now continue to defend itself against the Russian onslaught? Because quite clearly, with no further funding, if it doesn't come, then that means Ukraine will end up losing this war. Do you think the internal politics in America will trump the war that at this moment is being fought by Ukraine with the help of the Western nations?
It's a very complicated question. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the most important factor in the war thus far has been the will of the Ukrainian people to resist. Without that, all of the assistance from the U.S. and other countries would be meaningless. The assistance that's being provided is a factor in keeping that will strong, but it's not the only one.
No, but let me actually ask you this, Mr. Irath. Do you think Joe Biden will be able to overcome the political hurdles within Washington and will be able to offer more aid to Ukraine in a meaningful manner in the next months to come?
I think that there is a deal to be struck, that both parties will understand it is in the interest of the country to continue to assist Ukraine, and they will find a way to work through the politics and continue to provide some of that support.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Irath, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
You're welcome.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.